Okay, so this week we couldn't get a video review ready in time, but the Ryzen 9 9950 X3D has arrived, the latest and greatest CPU from AMD, and I have personal stakes in this because I've bought one, and here it is. Yep, it's time to upgrade my PC.
That's awesome.
It's time to upgrade my PC from the 13900K, which it's always been a bit questionable, that PC. It used to crash a lot, which I thought was the issue with the high voltage. The BIOS updates seem to improve matters, though. It's been relatively stable. However, we're seeing big performance increases, and the thing about this Ryzen processor is that it's the best of both worlds, the best of all worlds. You want a high productivity based processor for the kind of work we do, but at the same time, you want the X3D cache for the gaming side of things. And with the previous X3D, there's always been some sort of gotcha, right, when it comes to the 16-core parts. But Will's reviewed it. He's put all the benchmarks together. I've put some notes together based on his benchmarks, and holy crap, I'm glad I bought this thing. It looks like a complete beast. I just first of all wanted to talk quickly about video encoding. It seems to be marginally faster than the 9950X non-3D, which is great.
That's
blows
cool.
my 13900K out of the water, which is great because video encoding is one of the most CPU intensive tasks we do. But the gaming side of things, the 9800X3D was kind of mind-blowing. And so it is with this. I'm just going to go through some of the games based on Will's benchmarks here. Dragon's Dogma 2, we've got this custom run where we just sort of circle around the city. And it is very CPU intensive. 32% faster than the non-X3D product.
Wow.
which is nuts. This puts it on par with the 9800X3D, 15% faster than a 14900K. There are a couple of scenarios where this thing is slightly slower than the 9800X3D. Starfield, the 9800X3D, 4% faster, but come on, 4%. I can trade that 4% for 8 more cores and 16 more threads for my production work. And even so, they're 20% faster than the 9950X, 8% faster than the 14900K. Mind-blowing. We've got our custom run also here in Cyberpunk 2077, where we just circle the Cherry Blossom Marketplace, and this batters the CPU. This is another example where the X3D, the 8-core one, 3% faster, so I don't care, 19% faster than the non-3D model, 15% faster than the 14900K. I mean, holy crap, this is just astonishing. Alex, we have to do this one, Flight Simulator 2020. That run over New York, which is basically super CPU limited, 35% faster than the non-X3D model. 35%. That puts it on par with the 9800X3D, 32% faster than the 14900K. There are certain games where just having the 3D cache just gives like a monumental boost to performance, and I think we can quite safely say it's the ones that aren't particularly cache friendly, aren't particularly optimal from a CPU perspective. And I also was quite interested in Will's result for Far Cry 5 because that engine really is still driven mostly by a single core, but it does seem to be the case that, again, the X3D makes a big difference. Another 35% win over the non-X3D model.
That's
the
great.
9800X3D, the 8-core part, 3.5% faster, but again, that's irrelevant. The 14900K comparison, wow, 37.5% faster than a 14900K, which in turn means it's going to be like wiping the floor with the Arrow Lake parts. Yeah. Final one, which kind of blew my mind a bit, almost to the point where it's, well, first rule of benchmarking is if something looks wrong, you kind of think it is wrong. So maybe I'd like to retest this, but it actually, thinking about it, sort of makes sense. Baldur's Gate 3, Act 3, Alex. We got that custom run through the city of Baldur's Gate, 48% faster than the non-X3D model.
That jives.
The reason why I actually think the benchmark is sound is because it is on par with the 9800 X3D. 43% faster than the 14900K. So, Oliver, sitting there with your 14700K, isn't it?
13700K.
13.
Not even as good as that.
Yeah, you've been thinking about upgrading for a while.
Yes,
does this
I
hit
have.
The spot for you?
Well, I've been contemplating upgrading different computers at different points this year, but I'm trying to restrain myself to some degree.
Yeah.
But this seems really compelling. It's within a margin of error with the 9800 X3D, which is obviously the fastest gaming processor by some margin, and it basically seems to me really on par with the 9950X, which was already pretty much the fastest content creation processor in the business for almost anything. So, and they also seem to have sorted out all the CPU scheduling that they had, issues that they had with gaming tasks not consistently running on the Vcache CCD. That seems sorted out as well. And they also say you don't need to reinstall Windows between processor swaps necessarily, which is a nice boost for ease of use, and I'm sure for testing and benchmarking as well. So it seems like a really strong product. Best of all worlds, almost any production relevant workload. It's the fastest CPU available for Windows users. So that's pretty promising. I would be very curious to see a comparison between this and something like the Apple M3 Ultra, which I think is probably faster in a lot of circumstances. That would be interesting. Although I don't know if you consider that consumer level necessarily, because Apple doesn't really have a super delineated pro and consumer line necessarily. But that CPU is obviously very expensive. So yeah, I think this is a really promising CPU. It's certainly something I'd consider if I was going to get a gaming computer upgrade. But I think now I would probably gravitate towards the 9800 X3D, just because if you're doing testing on it, you know 100% that it's going to operate within the parameters you probably think it will. There's no dual CCD stuff. So I would just like to eliminate that one source of like testing uncertainty. I know in the BIOS you can disable the second CCD if you want to, but that seems like
but nobody's ever going to do that realistically.
No. If it was just for casual use, then I think the 9800 X3D or the 9950 X3D rather is a really compelling CPU. But if you're doing like testing on it, I think 9800 X3D is just a bit more reliable in that respect.
Alex, thoughts?
I'm just listening for the crickets coming from Intel here, and they don't got anything, man. They got nothing. It's crazy. The AMD dominance is glorious. I really love the X3D chips. Like Rich, I switched from a 12900K, and for me there were aspects of the 12900K and that system that I really liked, but for me actually the E-cores were always the biggest problem, kind of like the 7950 X3D parts, etc., where you wouldn't, with the gremlins in the system, you weren't sure if you were getting the proper performance you should be getting due to the fact that scheduling was maybe not prioritizing the right cores. And that really pushed me away from that system. There were so many times where I would go in a game and I'd just be like, I'm losing performance by having E-cores on. I'm losing performance by having E-cores on. And that is, if they've really cleaned this up based on Will's benches that they show off, this minor 3 to 4% lower than 900 X3D is, like you said, completely irrelevant. No one cares. And if they really did clean that up, then this is a great multi-purpose processor because you're getting that extra width when you really need it for the tasks that we do. I'd be very curious to see how it scales also in like crazy recording casts, like 8K 60 with like super high quality. Like we have the ability to do that, or even, like 4K 120.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. We'll get onto the platform in a second, Alex.
Yeah, and and I'm very curious about all those things. Also, the boards that you attach with it, I'm always really curious about, like how many PCIe lanes this thing would have, because I extensively use all of them. So, that's all these kind of things, and I think this sounds like an amazing product. What is the retail MSRP?
Well, this is where we start going into, into Here Be Dragons territory. Because I understood this thing in the UK costs £659, right?
That'd be good.
Which is like 200 more than the 9800X3D, which I think is actually a good price. I ended up paying £700 from a highly reputable supplier in the UK, simply because all of the other suppliers in the UK were charging £700 for it. So yes, I was scalped by a retailer, and that's unacceptable. And, again, what's going on in the PC hardware market? It's kind of like, well, I guess you could call it capitalism.
Yeah.
And the laws of supply and demand. But, it doesn't seem to happen with other areas of consumer electronics, right? In terms of anything that isn't a PC part specifically. If I want to buy a Samsung S25 Ultra, I go to the Samsung website, I see the MSRP there, and I buy one. If I want a new Mac, same difference, right? If I want a PlayStation, it's very rare that I go to Amazon and see Amazon trying to rip me off. What's going on here? This has got to be sorted out. It's completely nuts. Let's talk about the platform, Alex, because yes, I do want to actually work with this thing. That's the key point of it. It's a personal PC, but I am going to be using it for my workstation. And there's a problem with PCIe lanes that hasn't been solved since the end of the high-end desktop line. And I've got an Asus X670E Pro Art Creator board.
That's a good one.
Which, it's got basically the lanes can be quite intelligently divided. So you have two 8X lanes if you want them across two slots, and then a 4X lane that comes off the chipset. So in theory, then I can have my GPU on one of the X8 slots, and I can have the 8K capture card on the next X8 slot. It needs an X8 slot. And then we can have a 4K card on the X4 slot. So that should work. I think that's how you've got things set up on your system, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's an older board. It's PCIe 4, and then also the bottom can be 4. But also that limits, I don't know what it is like on yours, but that limits how many NVMEs I can throw in the system.
Yeah, I think I can have a maximum of 4.
Okay, see, I have a maximum of 2 with the setup on mine.
That's unacceptable.
That is unacceptable. But as a result, they're very high capacity ones. And then the rest is going through SATA on my end for like longer cold storage kind of stuff. But not really cold, it's warm. But yeah, I that's what I'm always curious about. Yeah, it's tepid. It's an SSD SATA. They don't get that hot anymore. But that's the always thing for my buying preferences for these things, which is really to look for it. Because like lately, also I updated the BIOS on my board, and I've been struggling with PCIe since then a little bit occasionally. Some gremlins that I'm trying to chase, and if I just had enough from the get-go, I wouldn't be chasing these things anyway. So that would be my upgrade direction to ensure, because I use Rich. I use a 4090 as the GPU. Then depends on the capture card. It depends for the 4K 60 or 4K 121. Depends on what I'm capturing, because I'll use the one that has more flexibility with HDR, for example, as well as it works better with my PlayStation 5 Pro. And then on the bottom of that, I have an analog capture card, which is 4X. And it definitely uses that when I'm doing something like 1080p, and I want to use RGB with that actually, because low resolution content, you can't really be decimating the chroma on it because it looks really, really bad. So
when you do your zooms and stuff, especially.
Yeah, so you really don't want to do that. Depending upon also what I'm recording, I want more than 422 or 420. I want 444 occasionally. And these are things that I need all the PCIe for. And that's not a guarantee. And your platform sounds great, though.
Well, fingers crossed it all works. Yeah. That's all I can really say. I'm just kind of baffled. On my main test system for GPU reviewing, it uses a 9800X3D. High-end Asus board, it's got 2 PCIe slots. I mean, if I'm buying a high-end Asus board, I'd kind of like more than 2 PCIe slots. It's kind of a bit bizarre, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there we are. Okay. Yeah. Any final thoughts there, Alex?
You're going to have to that
Report
first
back.
memory training you're going to have when you
fun,
turn on the board. Yeah, it is a little scary because you're not sure what's going on. So get used to that. And also get used to, since this is your first, I think it's the first time you'd be using a Ryzen platform for your main editing rig, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The memory training, as well as setting up whether or not to use memory context restore. I've had less luck with it than other people. I would say
what is it
off.
first of all?
Okay, so memory context restore remembers essentially the settings that the memory training does from the previous boots. So it doesn't have to do it to the same degree. But the problem is I've had boot errors when that thing starts. It doesn't get to post ever if I use it.
That's problematic.
That is problematic, but maybe you're luckier than me.
Who knows? Okay. Well, I'll keep everyone posted there. GPU-wise, I currently use a 4080, which I'm quite happy with. The main reason I use the 4080 is that this, wasn't useful for anything else. It was that weird kind of in-betweener GPU. Obviously, for most of our sort of high-end testing, we use the 4090. I guess I could use a 4090 now. The 5090's here, but yeah, I'll keep you posted.